how and when to create a post and some ideas about what you want to use strategically to create in that post. Posting on LinkedIn is a gift to you as far as I can tell you when it's used well. Write it so well that people will want to comment, will want to share, and will want to know more about you. Because all they have to do is click on your name and they go right to your LinkedIn profile. And that's where they fall in the like with you, as I was telling you. That's the like part.
It's important to show your expertise. It is important to be an expert, but much more important.
My name is Nina, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar. I wanted to start out by giving a bit of background on our speakers, Andy Brownstein and Mark Halpert. Andy Brownstein is a member at Green Herlocker with over 25 years of experience counseling early stage and mature companies in corporate, M&A, and commercial real estate matters, including renewable energy development. He has formerly worked in investment banking, private equity fund management, corporate development with a Fortune 500 company, and helped start a company that grew from ground zero to over 20 million in sales and is a member of the Inc. 5000. Mark W. Halpert is a self-prescribed multipreneur. In 2010, he started his third concurrent company, Connect to Collaborate, to spread his LinkedIn and networking evangelism to train and coach others and offer professionals the opportunity to better explain how to present their brand and positioning for LinkedIn audiences. Mark has taught at bar associations, professional practitioner groups, and law schools on the topic of LinkedIn. The webinar presentation you're about to watch will be approximately 1 hour, and Mark and Andy will be joining us for audience questions after the presentation is complete as well. If you have any questions for them that come up during the presentation, please feel free to submit them through that Q&A button and the control panel at the bottom of your screen. Without further ado, here are Mark and Andy to discuss professionalism in the age of social media, relevance, reliability, and referability on LinkedIn.
Well, hi, everybody. There we go. Thank you very much. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about what we call professionalism in this age of social media. With my 3 R's, if I could be so authoritarian, relevance, reliability, and referability. And we'll get a little bit into that in just a moment. As an introduction, what I've found in my 13 years of coaching attorneys and other professional practitioners is that attorneys don't keep up and need to learn what is LinkedIn's latest best practices, not only to make a mark or make a point of what they're all about, but to stay visible and viable. And that comes from differentiating yourself. There are many attorneys in your firm. There are many attorneys on the floor of the building, perhaps that you work in other floors, in other buildings in your city around the world. How are you and your firm separate, distinct, and memorable to beat the competition, to be the first person or the first firm to be recognized as I need to contact, in this case, Andy, for this situation I have? So that comes from referrals, and it comes from just mental agility and memorability. So we want to be sure that you are completely top of mind. And when this is done well, folks, let me tell you, you have a strategy to make yourself, your firm, whether you work in a firm or you work in a corporation or you're a solo, to be not only memorable, not only referable, but repeatable. And that's what we're looking for. We always love the repeat business. We always love all the goodies that come with that. So what we're going to do is consider the continuum of using LinkedIn for attorneys. A reader could find you on LinkedIn. They could fall in like with you by something you've said in your thought leadership, in your comments, in your commentaries. They would want to contact you, engage with you. They like what they hear on the phone with you. They fall in love with you so much that they become your attorney. Your client relationship begins. Ka-ching, as I like to say, because it's memorable. So I'm going to repeat a few things here and there because repeating things on LinkedIn is totally okay. So long as you use different words, you're going to reinforce concepts that you want people to understand and remember, because very rarely do we even remember after hearing something the first time. We've already done Andy's and my bio, so I'm going to zoom right through those. but there are our LinkedIn URLs in case you need them. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be the 3 R's: relevance, reliability, and referability. That's informing and planning your posts on LinkedIn and your news updates. And then the 4 C's: being concise, cogent, consistent, and compelling in what you actually write. We'll give some ideas on effective post topics. Andy has some doozies, wonderful ones that we've hand selected for you. These are hand selected. And then specific ideas about why they really worked. And so you'll see these ideas really are in action. Andy, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Mark. So I've worked with Mark for quite some time, and he and I helped develop a strategy for me. I'm in a particularly unusual situation, as the slide indicates. While I was a practicing attorney at the beginning of my legal career, I really spent, over 20 years in a variety of positions, as my introduction indicated, where I wasn't in the active practice of law, very adjacent practice. I was doing work that might be considered general counsel style work, but I was also doing a variety of just business roles. And so coming back to practicing law after almost 22 years out of the active, private practice of law, it was important for me to be able to establish certain specialties and bona fides. And some of the things we'll talk about today in both Mark's slides and some of the examples that I'll go through were specifically intended to do exactly the things that he indicates on the left side of the slide: the relevance, reliability, and referability ideas, as well as establishing some specialties for me and trying to reestablish certain bona fides as a qualified and competent, counselor via describing various experiences I've had in my career.
So I'm going to take you through some concepts to determine how and when to create a post, and some ideas about what you want to use strategically to create in that post. Posting on LinkedIn is a gift to you, as far as I can tell you, when it's used well. When it's not used well, it just falls flat. I have gained many pieces of business by things I have said on LinkedIn, not only at that day that I said them, but many weeks thereafter. When people go back and they look through them, they're searchable. You can look for keywords on posts and find people who've said things about areas that you're interested in. So you want to make your posts as interesting as possible. And there are some ideas about doing this. And I tip my hat to Professor Dixon, who introduced me to these ideas. I took those ideas and I twisted them to a LinkedIn taste. And so let's go through them. One of the first things you want to do is you want to tell people that you're connected to or who follow you on LinkedIn something they don't quite know yet, but you know. And that could be something factual. It should be always factual, but it could be fact-based. Something in the legal material that has just come about. Something that is informational about some new laws or a new strategy that somebody took, or something in your field that you're talking amongst other lawyers for more interest level. Something newsworthy in the law. It doesn't even have to be in the law, as we'll soon find out. It could be really about anything that you want to convey, but you feel comfortable conveying because you think that you have an idea to offer. And then new developments. Again, not only just in the law, could be in something ancillary to what you're working on. So something that you know that others don't know yet, but you want to add to their knowledge base. That's about the most basic thing you can do. And it may not be something you know. It may be an article you read that you want to share with others, but just don't stick up the link to that article. Tell the reader in your post exactly why this means something that they should spend time on. Give them, from your point of view, a curation of the material that everybody's reading all the time, but why this is important in its own right. And go one more step beyond that. What do you want your connections and your followers to feel that they don't yet feel? So that's a little bit of the knowledge we talked about a moment ago, but it might be emotional curiosity that you can bring to somebody else about something you've gone through. We're seeing a lot of that right now. We're seeing a lot of stories of perseverance against deadly illnesses, or my child was very sick, or something that seems to be a catastrophe. And the best ones of those are the ones that end with, and this is what I learned from it. because we all root for the underdog in a story like that. It's the oldest way of telling a story in the world, but it's always about how the protagonist persevered and eventually won the day. So not all these sickness stories end happily, but often they end in a way that somebody talks about something that they learned. I had a friend who just spent 3 months in the hospital, was at death's door. He learned so much about himself. He continues to use this in his posts and ties his business aspects to that post to give more understanding about what he does that makes him stand apart from his competitors. What other cerebral appeal do you bring other than the emotional side? You can appreciate something somebody else did and say that, or you want someone else to appreciate a contribution you're making. And then this becomes part of the work that people will consider doing with you, because you are adding not only the emotional, but the cerebral side of all of this. And they become confident in you and your advice and your reliability. And then we go one step beyond that. What do you want them to believe that they don't yet believe? Because there's a big jump between feeling and believing. So it might be that they should learn about a fresh opinion from a case that just came down. Something that people are talking about, but not quite getting to the heart of what makes it really superior and believable or important. What experiences have you had as a practitioner that might help others in the same situation where you've persevered? What research have you done that makes news or makes new ground? And then I like to say we have a lot of isms that we believe in that because they've always been that way. A lot of those beliefs have changed since the pandemic and changed daily, it seems, as the news cycle goes. So what's going on in the new now that people need to readapt their beliefs? And finally, the last piece of this is the most important. What do you want them to do? The call to action. So I would suggest to everybody that in every post that you make on LinkedIn, add a call to action at the end. If you'd like to know more, contact me. If you'd like to read more about this, here's the link. Or make it a question. Have you found this to be the case? Or do you agree with me? And contrary arrangements or contrary conversation is fine so long as it's professional. So there can be professional argument. And that's where it's most interesting, when the conversation gets really two sides trying to find the common ground that makes sense for both of them. And that's really pathfinding. So you want to share content with others? Give them the link. You want to comment on their post? You're asking for other people to comment on your post. Make it two-way. Ask for conversation. Always professionally, as I said. Engage me for further conversation. How can I help you? There's nothing in any of this that is contentious or too over the top, but too often attorneys just produce factual material and lay it out there without the necessary know, believe, feel, and do aspects to their posts. So consider your next post with one or some of these at the same time, but always ask for a call to action at the end of your post.
For me, just before we run away from those slides, I would say that I live in the bottom left and the top right posts. For me, as a member of a smaller firm, sometimes you can't, if there are listeners out there who are like me and work in a small to medium sized firm, but work in a generally specialized area. So for instance, one of the specialties I spent a lot of time on is renewable energy. There's a lot of changing regulations in that industry right now as a result of legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act and so forth and so on. There are 20 really great, really big law firms that are posting, the day the IRS releases new guidance on some of this legislation. I can't beat them to that, right? They've got lots of resources. They've got marketing teams. They've got marketing departments. They've got 50 associates in those departments. I can't get it out fast enough, and I can't do it quickly enough to beat them on that new feature of the legislation. But what I can do, and what we'll talk about later, is that I tend to live in the emotional curiosity and cerebral appeal box. right? I might live on I do a lot of experiential conclusions as a practitioner type posts. I will post on knowledge-based information, but don't feel like you've always got to race to get the material out before somebody else does, because sometimes you just can't, you can't beat everybody else to it. And unless you can do it to their quality and depth, in some cases, you're better off. You're better off focusing your attention on other aspects of the places where you can, where you can be more successful more easily, than trying to be the first and best out of the box with a new piece of information.
I'm glad you added that, because one of my clients that I'm working with right now feels more comfortable in a week later after some news item occurs to analyze it and assess it.
That's a great
perspective.
because, I mean, I could do that more easily than I could say today the IRS released its commentary on on this section of the Inflation Reduction Act. I can't do it that fast. I can't do it in as much depth either.
Yeah. So what he's been writing is, in case you missed it, this happened.
Great idea. I think
And
you've read,
and another thing
you said, an important nugget in this thing that might not have been thought about.
Yeah. Another thing he says is, not only in case you missed it, but my clients are asking me these questions. So therefore I have these answers because I've done that research for you.
And I think that's better anyway, because anybody can can Google the basic information to be first out of the starting gate. Isn't that useful in this case? Without over focusing on it, I like that approach so much better anyway, because it demonstrates expertise, not just capacity for consuming and spitting back out knowledge.
Yeah, because what you find out is later in retrospect, so much more is clearer because the dust settles and you get to, why is it important to my client?
Well, in fact, you could argue again, now we're really down the rabbit hole on this. Like, most people are reading those so-and-so, IRS issued this regulation today. All you're really telling them is go read the regulation yourself. How useful is that? Right.
And it's not, let me tell you how I don't want to read that regulation.
Right. And I think what your client is doing is much better. I would like to, I'll probably think about doing something like that as well.
Good. We'll look for that from you, Andy. Okay. So what we want you to do is we want you to go just a little bit further than your comfort level. And then it becomes comfortable with practice. Add more life to your posts. Add some spark. Add some personality. That's okay. Of course, you want to be consistent with the marketing thrust of your firm, if that is a constraint for you or is a consideration for you. But we want you to do these 3 R's as you think about what you're going to produce. Are you being relevant to the need that you're perceiving is out there? Again, what do my clients are asking me? I am telling you in retrospect. So you can either observe on your own, or you can curate from others' material before you and add your own commentary to that. That makes you immediately relevant and readable and memorable. Memorable is the word here we're trying to find. What makes you reliable? How can you produce the sources and confirm those sources that people can go to and they can then learn further? And how can you add your lens to what the other sources are saying? Because you have your own perspective on it. So it's about giving more than you're getting. It's about being accessible because you have the perspective from your years of experience. And finally, referral comes from being relevant and reliable. No one is going to refer you if you grow your business that way, unless they can be confident that your material and the name that goes over your material is actually going to answer the question, hey, do you know somebody who can do this for me? Do you know somebody who's a good expert on this? Do you know somebody who has a great perspective on that? That becomes really important. So these are some of the macro sense things that we'd like you to think about when you create the posts that you're going to put out on LinkedIn. And then as you're posting, let's make the strategy of what you're posting these 4 C's. You want to be concise. There are people who read your posts who are not lawyers, like me, who are not used to reading giant blocks of material. Be as concise as you can be. Make your post make your point rather not only to the layperson, but to other lawyers as well. That's really important. Be cogent. Use your words well. Find the right verbs that really accurately talk about what you're trying to convey. Show your depth of insight. That's really important. Action verbs, and don't use the passive voice. Use the active voice in your posts because you don't want to be thought about in retrospect. You want to be in the moment, in the forefront. Be consistent. Post. Try 2 to 3 times a week. There's no magic number. The algorithm doesn't give you points or not points for how many times you post in a week. I would say people give you mental points for how good your post is to their needs or close to their needs. So if you don't have something to say for a week, okay, not a big deal. But every time you have something important to say and convey, post. And if that's multiple times a day, so be it. If that's 5 times a week, so be it. That's great. Just be in the moment and be compelling, especially when news is breaking.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say a skill you're going to have to develop that I'm still developing is the mental reserve block, right? Like something happens during your day and you're like, oh, whatever it is, whether it's an illegal issue or whether it's a sort of that blinding glimpse of something obvious that you're like, oh, that would be a really good, that's interesting. Like that would make a good post. You've got to stop yourself and make sure you banked it so that, because we're all busy and you're not going to be able to write the post right there at that moment. So you've got, in order to create a good bank of content and have something in reserve, you've got to remember those little nuggets that happen that you think to yourself, well, that's something somebody really would want to hear about. It's not easy. That's even harder than actually writing the post. Writing the post is easy.
And if you put that thing out and it falls flat because it's silent, you hear
Don't worry about that. Doesn't matter.
No big deal.
Doesn't matter.
Try again with a different perspective down the road.
I mean, we're going to talk about this later a little bit more, but the ones that I thought were fantastic, a number of them just completely died on the vine. And ones that I didn't expect anybody to have any interest in were shockingly popular.
Yeah. And finally, be compelling. The last of the C's, roll it all up. Be that go-to person. Be that person they think about as the mental Rolodex in their head flips around and says, who do I need to talk to about this? Who can somebody refer me to about that? That's really important. Okay, and all of this ethically. I'm not going to lecture you on ethics. You all know your jurisdiction's ethics requirements. Just never say anything or allow anything to be said on your profile that you cannot get behind and tell is truthful. No one can ever say Andy's the best attorney who can ever get you through a situation like that. I can't, it's not reinforceable. So just be sure that your ethics, if you have a concern about ethics, either ask in your firm or ask your local bar association. They'd be happy to talk to you about it. We want to keep you completely on the up and up, but there's nothing wrong with offering your opinion. So please be sure that it's a legal and it's a professional opinion that you're offering and you can substantiate it. That's all I want to say on ethics. Andy, anything else you want to add to the ethics conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to be clear when you're offering a personal opinion and not a legal opinion, even if it's about a legal subject.
Okay, on we go. So how do you do this? Well, if you're like me or like a lot of my clients, you're always reading and you're always on the prowl for new material. Something that catches your eye, something that works within your area of expertise. And when you're writing this, and always write it on Word, folks, because we're finding a lot of situations where LinkedIn is losing material until you actually share it to LinkedIn. And this is what I'm telling all my clients, to write everything on Word, so this can do a spell check on it, grammar check on it, let it read it aloud to you back so you actually hear it in a voice, an artificial voice. That's on Word as well. But add color, add graphics, add video, add audio to make your point. Not only will it make your point, but it'll make your post stand out. People are multiple times more apt to open your post if it has a graphic associated with it. That's just human nature these days. We're very visually oriented.
Yeah, I mean, invest a little time just learning how to use the built-in tools. I mean, some of them are not 100% totally intuitive, but they are, they're there for your benefit.
So again, I talked about large blocks of language. We want to hear your voice in what you write, as if we were calling you on the phone or having a Zoom call with you. We want to hear your intonation, want to hear the way you express yourself, because that makes people want to come to you if they've never met you, but they read you and they like that. All right. Make us want to follow you over time, because we may not need you right now, but we do need you down the road, and we will remember you the more we read you. That's just common sense, but unfortunately, very infrequently utilized. Always call to action. I talked about, in case you missed it, all those types of things. Last but not least, let me just say here, if you don't tell us something, we're never going to know. If you've had a situation in your life or your professional life, and it is applicable to a situation that you are opining about, tell us. Tell us what you learned from it, and tell us why it was important for you. Don't think that people don't care, because we always like to know how we can learn from other people. Andy, to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've all run into attorneys in negotiating deals or working in litigation who do have that sort of sense of you get that feeling that they are holier than thou, really want to avoid tone and language that appears to imply superiority. In fact, I would argue that being self-deprecating is almost always more fun on LinkedIn, to sort of poke fun at yourself. I do it all the time. I think people, again, and we've focused on this already, you need to be genuine. Talk about the why rather than simply the factual piece of information. Take non-standard viewpoints, contrarian opinions, poke fun at conventional wisdom. All those things are more memorable than just towing the line and just talking about what everybody else is talking about. LinkedIn is a cauldron of material. A lot of it is just, to use a fancy word, pablum. There's nothing to it, right? I mean, you want to be the content that people are remembering, and that concept of memorability never really goes away. LinkedIn is also a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, never-ending networking event, right? It's like going to a cocktail party with no drinks that never stops. So you do want to give people that impression of be somebody you'd want to talk to at that networking event, right? Would grab a cup of coffee or a beer, or go to their seminar if you were at a trade show or a conference, and you want to create conversations. We haven't talked a whole lot about this, but a lot of the action in LinkedIn is in the comments. There's comments on a lot of social media can be kind of nasty, but LinkedIn doesn't tend to be so much that way, although there are always bad situations. But in general, comments are often where the action happens in LinkedIn, and where you really are creating memorability, because you're interacting with people. You're sort of at the networking event at that point, right? So, think about making posts, think about engaging with other people's posts. Even if you don't have something relevant to say that day, you might read something else that somebody else said that was really relevant. You could repost it. You could engage with them in a conversation. You could comment on that. You can comment on somebody else's comment. I mean, there's a million ways to be active and insert yourself and create memorability and expertise, and give the image of expertise without having to create a piece of content every day, or even, 3 or 4 times a week. Being present matters.
Yep. Somebody gets a new position, instead of giving them a thumbs up, which I think is very lame, it doesn't say anything at all. Just write, they're fortunate to have you. Good luck in your new position. All it takes is some words, and that can start a conversation. Especially if it's somebody you haven't spoken to in a long time. That reopens a conversation. If it's
Go ahead. Without over focusing on the quote unquote the algorithm, because there's no point in talking about the algorithm, because nobody really knows what it does. Right. But we do know that it is fair to say that people who engage more get engaged with more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So use words, use great words, use words that make people understand why you like something, instead of just telling them you liked it. Because the writer who gets the like comments back then understands that he or she is onto something that may require additional material, because people are resonating to it. So thumbs up mean nothing. Smiley faces don't do anything. I think we're all better than that, a lot more intelligent than that from what I'm seeing. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So again, for a lot of people I speak to, they do legal writing all the time, but they also don't do personal writing. And so great article in Inc. magazine came out not too long ago. And the link is on the bottom here. And the quote, it says, writing makes you smarter if you want to think You want to learn to think, you need to learn to write. And I know all of you can think, but not everybody knows how to write this type of material. So it is a practice makes perfect thing. I've done hundreds, thousands at this point in my career, and I find that I write better and better as I get older and older, as I get more and more into my topics. So just keep thinking, would somebody refer my article to somebody else? Would somebody refer my comment to somebody else? That's where you can have that little bit of an out-of-body experience. You can say, what am I? I'm looking down on myself. Is this something I would want to read if I didn't know me? It's a great way to think about it. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Andy. He has so many wonderful examples that I have cheered him on. You'll see my name on a lot of them because I am one of those conversant people who keep the conversation going. So Andy, take it from here.
Now I'm going to let you keep running the slides, so I'll have you move slides for me. So I'm starting with which to me, again, a perfect example was something I didn't necessarily think was going to be all that popular of a post. This is a post about, if you can read it, I had a couple of posts I wrote in a row, series of posts in the first, these were the last couple of months, that I entitled, Okay, First Year Associates. So this one was about that moment. And I think this is why it resonated all the time with people, that moment that every new lawyer has. Doesn't matter whether you work in a law firm, whether you're clerking for a judge, whether you went in-house, whether you went to work for the government, whatever. There is a moment, I don't know when it happens for everybody else, but it happened to me pretty quickly where you're like, holy cow, I have no idea what we're doing here. Nobody taught me anything about any of this. I thought I went to law school to learn about how to be a lawyer. And of course, you realize you don't go to law school to learn how to be a lawyer. You go to law school to learn a bunch of other stuff, like I wrote in the post, how to think critically, how to write better, how to analyze fact patterns and identify situations, research, how to concentrate. And again, the advice at the end was concentrate on that. Stop worrying so much about the fact that you don't know what the heck you're doing, and you'll be fine. I got tons of comments. I got tons of associates. I got 18,000 views, which is a lot for me. And I think the reason is it's something that happens to every single new lawyer that nobody really verbalizes. And it also shows vulnerability. Like I said, there's also a little dig in there about big fancy law firms, which was not intended to be mean, but just sort of a little ha-ha. And it's encouraging at the end. So this was a great post for me. Got a lot of pickup, a couple hundred likes and 18,000 views and this is just a few of the comments. There's way more comments than this.
The one thing Andy does at the bottom, you see on the left-hand pane, he invokes names of people he is looking for commentary from.
It'll bring it up on their feed more, it will bring it up faster or right away or, whatever. So you can't put like 50 names in there. LinkedIn gets a little irritated with that, but I usually tag Mark in a lot of my posts because I know he'll be good for a comment. Some of those other folks are people that I've worked with in the past or work with now that I thought would appreciate it.
And then he chose 3 hashtags at the bottom just below that: Law Firm Life, Look Again, and Associates, because anybody that is on LinkedIn that follows those hashtags will see his post in their feed just by virtue of the fact that both parties are interested in that hashtag.
And my hashtag Look Again is kind of like my hashtag. I hashtag everything with that. It's like, it's not necessarily that relevant to anything. It doesn't mean much other than I'm asking people to think again, right? To think again is people, kind of used all the time. So I went with Look Again, which is, take a second look at something. Don't just gloss over, which is what this post was about. Don't gloss over this issue. Think about it.
And the LinkedIn coach in me is saying that you don't only have to put the hashtags at the bottom. You can go to hashtags in the material. And you can use about 5 to 10 hashtags now without the algorithm going bananas on you. And we've found that to be the case recently. So if somebody told you before you can only use 2 or 3 hashtags, that's kind of old material now. So,
but don't use 20.
Okay.
Yeah, we can move on from there. So this post was about what I call something that lawyers, there's a lot of people that post about this on LinkedIn. It's kind of that life lesson, which I guess the other post was a little bit like that, but it's again, talking about the idea of work-life balance. And I took a contrarian viewpoint here, essentially. I basically said there's no such thing. And I really do believe that there's no such thing as work-life balance. Work-life is a continuum. It's like a a pendulum, like a grandfather clock that swings back and forth. Every once in a while, it goes right through the middle, but doesn't stay there very long. You're almost always moving back and forth between one or the other. It's a little bit of a piece of, non-conventional wisdom. It's a life lesson. And it's a story, right? I mean, I tell you, I'm telling a story about me. I'm being vulnerable. I'm talking about how I have a problem with work-life balance, just like everybody else. And I didn't try and solve it. My point is there is no solution to the work-life balance question. The only solution is just keep paying attention to it and knowing that whatever's happening today or this week, it's going to swing back the other direction. All it takes is somebody getting sick at home or a client calling with a crisis, and it's just going to move back and forth all the time. And I think again, it's resonating with people because people don't want to talk about it a whole lot, or people, thankfully we're getting better at stuff like this in modern society about, mental health and work-life balance and all these issues. But it's still, in some cases, for people of a certain age, it's not a comfortable topic. And so talking about it, opens people up to having a conversation that might actually benefit them.
Yeah, you don't know where it's going to resonate. You don't know who's going to send it on to somebody else. Hey, you need to take a look at this. Andy's onto something. Maybe you could learn something from what he's saying himself.
Interestingly enough, both the last post and this post both had sentences that basically said, stop worrying about it so much. Mm-hmm. Right. I was telling those first-year associates not to worry about the fact that they didn't learn anything about what they're actually doing in law school. And I'm telling the people in this book, don't worry about having work-life balance. Just be cognizant that balance is a myth and that you're just going to swing back and forth. So this post was a pretty good popular post. I over hashtagged it at the bottom probably, but it encouraged people to make real useful comments as opposed to just saying, hey, I really appreciate what you said. It really resonated with me, or thanks very much. I started out by, again, being vulnerable. I'm not so great at productivity. I'm not a master at time management. I'm lousy at it. Everybody else is, probably better than me at it. But I do have a few tricks that I like to use. And so I thought, well, why don't I talk about some of those tricks that I do use, and we'll see what other people think about those tricks. And I encourage them with a call to action at the bottom, like Mark always encourages, to say, hey, tell me what yours are. And so I learned something, and everybody else did, hopefully, too.
Great. And I love the way people come up. They took your material and they added one on top of that, or one idea or a sub idea on top of yours. So it becomes this conversational volleyball that goes back and forth.
Right. And so you'll see a comment, one of them I liked, I talked about the idea of being a ruthless unsubscriber. Right. And so this lady who always comments, and we comment on each other's stuff, Emily Stedman, we could start a club, those who ruthlessly unsubscribe. I thought that was funny. All right. So, everybody likes to talk about Agnes. This is one of my favorite posts. So just to show you, Agnes is no myth. Here she is right here. So I wrote a post about my stapler. Why would you write a post about a stapler? As I said in my comments, Laura, if you're allowed to love your own posts, I don't know if you are. I love this one. But it's a story. It's a story about me and my career and the things that have happened to me. And, but I eventually flipped it to a business concept that was relevant to people, right? The idea that I would be so dedicated to my Bostitch B5B stapler reminded me of a book I had read years ago by Ken Blanchard called Raving Fans. I'm a raving fan, right? Everybody knows this. How many of us have had the really irritating experience of using a crappy stapler? This is a great stapler. Is it important? Is it a real big deal in your life? No, but I guarantee you, if you read this post, you're like, yeah, I've had that happen, man. I can't take it when that stapler doesn't work right. It really takes me off, right? And then I had a little cheeky finish for all of those of a certain age who love the movie Office Space. There's the scene with Milton and so I made it clear, hey, there was also the famous swing line red stapler that Milton was so obsessed with in the movie. And anybody who saw the movie, and we didn't post the comments here, but there's tons of comments about not just staplers, but all kinds of office supply stories about how people love their mechanical pencil, that this particular mechanical pencil or whatever it is. And all it is just being fun and memorable.
Just below the pictures, you see Andy invokes Land America Lawyers title, the company, in his post. At the top of the next column, you see he also invokes Global Realty Services Group, GRS Group, and just below Green Herlocker, his firm.
All
But this
places I ultimately stole the stapler from.
So they can follow you.
Right.
What this will do is anybody who follows those companies on the company profile page will also see this wonderful little tidbit that he wrote. And it just adds a little levity to the normal company profile page on LinkedIn. And it's just fun. So there's a degree of having fun and a degree of having serious fun here too. So good job on that, Andy. I was glad you did that.
Yeah, let's see here more comments. So we did actually, you can see all the crazy comments that we got. I mean, anybody's you can look back and see them yourself. There's all kinds of some other guy talking about a stapler, the Rexel Matador stapler, and white out liquid and all this other stuff. And it's great comments.
It went for days. It was hilarious. It was great. Okay, the PS.
No, this is the one you love. This is your favorite.
I love this one. You're right.
I don't know who on the call and where they're from, but if you're from the South, Texas, Southeast, you know about Buc-ee's. So like, I love Buc-ee's. I love everything about it. It's in a weird way, it's kind of like everything that's good about America and everything that's bad about America all in one place. And Mark, because he's from the Northeast, doesn't even really, I don't know that he's actually ever been to a Buc-ee's yet, even now.
I hadn't even heard of it until you introduced me to it.
Right. There you go. So again, just a fun, weird little, as I said, kitschy post. Anybody who's a Buc-ee's fan, look, they're all commenting about what they love about Buc-ee's. If you don't know what Buc-ee's is, it's like somebody took depends where you are in the country, so I'm not sure how to make a Circle K or a 7-Eleven or a Wawa, and put it on steroids and merged it with a Target. It's like this enormous gas station convenience store with like 120 gas pumps and a massive store attached to it. Anyway, we don't have to do it for it. It's just fun. Like, people are going to remember this. They're going to remember you. It doesn't mean you have to show people every day that you're the best lawyer in the world at whatever it is you do, but they need to remember you, right? And I remember I had a boss one time who said, I don't care what they say about me as long as they spell my name right. Now, I don't know if I 100% believe that, but he was making kind of the point that we're sort of making here, right? What's important is to be memorable.
Well, this one's worth going back to, folks. It's just great fun. So take a look at it on his profile page.
Right. So here's a real law post, right? I mean, I hadn't even focused. I mean, you'll notice that we've done 5 of these already. And I haven't even once talked about the law, actual law. So here's one that is actual factual information, but it is also about how to think through why the factual information might be important to you. Why do we do the things that we do in certain areas of the law? This is a particular post about something that startups might need to be thinking about. And as I said in my commentary in the bullets, I talked a lot about not just the actual mechanics, but why you might want to do what we're talking about. Not just, what the agreement actually is that we're talking about, founder stock restriction agreements.
And there's a really good call to action on the second column, just before the hashtags. If you're interested in learning more, please contact me.
And also a teaser in the front to say, look, I didn't tell you everything about founder stock agreements. I can't, right? There's more to know.
And the reason the call to action is so important is we go so fast and we are so attention deficit right now that we might not even think to call Andy for more information. We just keep moving.
And I want to quickly point out that there's a bullet here that we wrote afterwards. This was originally a blog post on our website. And what I did was it was too long to be one LinkedIn post. So since we had already written the content and we already had it, we cut it into 2 halves, created some intro language and some transitional language. And then we've made it like a 2-day post. I posted one day and one the next day.
Yeah. And serialization of posts is great, folks, because you really get people invested in what's coming up tomorrow, what's coming up by the end of the week. I've done 5 and 7 day posts of serials, and they just keep adding to the information. People follow them, they send them out. It's really quite amazing. And no one's doing this. Another differentiator is a one-shot deal for most people. Serialization is a really great tactic.
There's some people I know and Mark knows, for instance, a guy that we both know well, who has a podcast, and he takes cuts of his podcast into little 30-second, 60-second chunks and reposts them as LinkedIn posts or as Twitter, as all over social media. And so that's really valuable. I mean, not that we all need to do podcasts, but my point is we've all written articles or blog posts or some other piece of content. You've got stuff you can repurpose. So just think about repurposing that in a way that's helpful.
Exactly. And then when you're repurposing, you'll probably just add a little bit to it to make it that much better. That's where we're going here.
You see a lot of posts. I'll comment first by looking at the bullets on the right. Like you see tons of posts that say, this law firm's pleased to announce that our lawyers did X, or that I did X, or we closed this, or we won this case. Aren't we great? Okay, that's fine. But it isn't, there's no hook. It's nice. I'm not sure how much people really care or if they're really going to dig into it. But, it's okay to do it. I think it's better to do it in a different way. This is a super tiny post. It's 100 words. All I did was say, basically, I had a good day, right? We closed a big deal. And then in the evening, I drove out and did a hearing with a client on a renewable energy project. Okay. I was just talking about how it made me feel. Felt good about it, right? Some days stink. Some days are a slog, or, you're not happy about them. Anybody who thinks their job is great every day, more power to them, but most of us don't feel that way. So it's okay. If you had a good day, why not say so? Frankly, if you had a bad day, it's okay to say so. Be creative about it. Say something positive if you can about it. But don't just say, hey, don't tell your law firm to post, hey, we won a case of this case or that case. I'm not sure if that people care that much.
And you see in the third line, he calls out Claire, and on the fourth line, Jared, just to thank them. They were probably not expecting that. And so they came in and read their LinkedIn, hey, you just been mentioned in Andy Brownstein's post. Well, they want to know what's been said about them. And they, I'm sure, thanked you profusely for just taking the time. That's a great tactic.
I'm not sure how many more we have, but I do want to leave time for questions. Do you recall how many more we have after this?
I think there's one or two. I can't see the
Okay,
whole.
so let me go quickly. I'll go quickly here. Here's one, again, showing vulnerability, admitting that I didn't know a particular subject matter. It celebrated a good deed. I didn't know something about a particular subject. I know something about this subject matter, but I didn't know a lot. I didn't know enough. So I looked around, did some research, and then I called a friend, basically, and said, hey, here's my issue. What do you think? They're a lawyer at another firm. They arguably have no reason to help me, but they had no hesitation about just jumping in and giving me their thoughts. And so I couldn't talk about it in detail because obviously there's client confidentiality involved. I didn't name the person. I didn't want to do that. I just said, here's what I did. And then I gave some life lessons. One, it's okay to ask other people. You're not going to look stupid. They're going to appreciate that you think they're expert enough that you would want to call them. They'll be flattered. Secondly, do the same for somebody else if they ask you.
Yeah, there's nothing else said. It's so good. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up.
Awesome. Okay, good.
Thanks very much. All right, so a couple of takeaways here from me and then from Andy. So new material, great. Curate the material that you're reading that you think is important to share with others from your experience. Old material, as Andy mentioned, is great to repurpose because if it's lifelong, it's always worth taking out, shining it up a little bit. Write it so well that people will want to comment, will want to share, and will want to know more about you. Because all they have to do is click on your name and they go right to your LinkedIn profile. And that's where they fall in the like with you, as I was telling you. That's the like part. Again, color, graphics, video, audio, all that stuff, really important. It really helps. It makes people want to read it. It makes them want to understand it. Be sure that you have the rights to use that picture, or you can cite the source of that picture. Amplify your voice from your experience. Tell people you know what you're talking about. Now demonstrate it by what you've said. And often you need to ask people to get on the conversation with you. So encourage a conversation. Again, I said earlier, if something just falls flat, then go a couple of more days or a week later and say, in case you missed it, I posted about this. And today it's even more important because here's what we know today we didn't know 5 days ago. And make that the new twist on something you believe, something you feel, something you want people to know about that they don't necessarily know what you want them to do. So again, tell us or we'll never know. Your opportunity is to differentiate yourself on your profile by your credentials. But your real greatest opportunity is to differentiate yourself in your thought leadership. And this is where you have your opportunity to be a thought leader amongst all the people that you either are collegial with or are competing against. And often those lines blur. You want to be memorable. You want to be referable. Andy, do you?
Yeah, without repeating anything that Mark said, I think, again, it's important to show your expertise. It is important to be an expert, but much more important, as the second bullet there says, to tell people why these things are important rather than just what's important. As I said earlier, sort of the conventional wisdom speaks for itself. It doesn't need repeating. What is useful and what is relevant and what is meaningful to people is making people think about conventional wisdom differently or a non-standard viewpoint. That is being interesting, right? Being interesting is incredibly important. I would hope that after spending 45 minutes or 50 minutes with me and Mark, now that we're now people you'd want to grab coffee or a beer with, right? It's the same thing in your LinkedIn posts. You want people to walk away going, he's an interesting guy. I wonder what he's really like, right? I mean, is he just like he taught? Is his voice in person the same as his voice in writing? What kind of person is he going to be? And again, if you've done a good balance of creating some expertise in your profile and your posts, and you've got a good job of creating conversation in your posts, then you sort of hit the sweet spot of what is going to make people remember you and reach out to you when the time comes.
So I think that takes us to the end. So we'll get some questions, I hope.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Mark and Andy, for your presentation. We can now move on to audience questions. Just a friendly reminder for our participants, if you have a question for Mark and Andy, please feel free to click that Q&A button at the control panel at the bottom of your screen and submit your questions. Looks like we already have a couple here, so you can go ahead and get started with those. Our first question is, can you give us some examples of how posting on LinkedIn has positively impacted your practice's visibility?
I mean, I can. So you saw a couple posts, I think maybe just one post that we used today about something that's relevant to the startup world. It was about 2 years ago. I have a neighbor. He's not a client, though he is a business person. The kids went to school together. Our kids went to school together, high school together. And I ran into him and he goes, I gave your name to somebody. I read one of your posts and this guy was telling me that for a variety of reasons, he's got a startup and he had counsel and counsel left the firm and went to a new firm, and the new firm wouldn't let him bring the business over because his rates changed and it was too cheap or whatever it was. And he had to he just said, now I need somebody new. And I saw your post and it reminded me that you do a lot of this work. So I gave him your name and it turned into a client. And now he's been a client for a couple of years. This friend of a friend who I didn't know. And even the friend wasn't a client. He just knew me.
Yeah. A colleague of mine who's a LinkedIn coach had seen me writing about working with law firms, and she got a lead to go help a law firm, pretty good sized firm here in Connecticut. And she said, I can't do this. I'm going to give it to Mark because I saw he posted on it. And that was my largest client for that year. So these are not made up stories. These are real things that happen. Now, is it going to happen every day? No. Is it luck? Probably it's finesse more than luck because you need to be memorable.
I mean, sometimes we talk about this in the sort of old school way of marketing yourself, whether it's advertising or going to a conference or a trade show. We debate internally at the firm, well, should we do this or should we not do this? Or it's going to cost us $2,000 or whatever to do this thing. And sort of the sort of pat response is, well, all it takes is one new client, right? And you've gotten your return on investment, or an existing client sends you more work than they might have otherwise sent you. Whereas even if you put an hourly rate on the time you invested in writing all your posts and added it all up over the course of a year, again, if you got like one or two more clients a year, that it pays for itself. If you want to look at it as sort of cold, hard dollars.
Yeah. I had
Or the pays for itself, for sure. I mean, this one client I've paid, I've been able to build, we've had a lot of billable work from him. And so it's been a real return on investment.
I had a prospect take me apart. He wanted to know what exactly is the return on investment on LinkedIn. I mean, it's not a calculation. You don't know. And then I have no control over what he says on LinkedIn. So it's all about what you say.
Right, but it's no different than saying, what's the return on investment on running ads in your local lawyer weekly? What's the return on investment on going to that conference?
But he did call me 6 months later and he did say, I got my first client on LinkedIn. And let me tell you how I appreciate what you taught me. That makes me happy because I turned another person's head around a little bit.
And in fact, I mean, the argument for posting on LinkedIn is that we need to get to the next question, but right, you're 100% in control of it, right? You go to a trade show, you go to a conference, you don't know who's going to be there. You don't know who's going to you're going to run into. But on LinkedIn, while you may not know who's going to comment on your post, you can control what you want to say all the time.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Our next question is, social media gets overwhelming for me to manage. Why should I just stick to LinkedIn, or should I, depending on my practice areas, use other platforms too?
I'll let Mark start there for sure.
That's a good question. I get a lot. And so it all depends upon who your clientele is. If your clientele is a corporate community, Facebook is not where you want to be. If your clientele is the consumer community, Facebook is where you want to be, as well as LinkedIn, because you are a business person catering to the consumer world. But if you're strictly in B2B, or if you're in e-commerce, or if you're in something like that, you want to be on top of where 950 million people are at the global water cooler of the world. And if you want to learn what's going on in other countries and you want to bring those ideas back to your business in the US, it's another place to be on LinkedIn. You're never going to get that on other social media that's going to tie right to your business.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I have seen there's been some really good posters who are on Instagram and TikTok doing reels and TikToks who are consumer-based people, like a guy who does like traffic work. And he posts about how to deal with like a traffic ticket or, what to do if the cops pull you over. They're fantastic. But, if 100% agree with B2B, if you're B2B, stay on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to care about traffic tickets, but I will say that if you're looking for the social media with the highest net worth per capita, it is LinkedIn.
Our last question is going to be, I see some of my colleagues use LinkedIn to post personal updates. Do you think it's beneficial to show more of your personal life or your professional life, or should we do a combination?
The pendulum is swinging to the personal side recently, very recently, especially after we've come out of the pandemic, because we all had the same situation in the pandemic. So it sort of brought us to a critical mass, a critical place where we really began to look inward. We began to appreciate our home life, our family life. Andy was talking about that a bit. Again, I said earlier, if you had serious illness in your family, please do not tell us all of the details about how many times you went to the hospital and all your lab tests and all. That is just beyond, and I get it, that people need to get it off their chest. It's just not the place. But if you're going to do it on LinkedIn, do it with a story and a moral that we can all apply uniformly. That makes it universal.
Yeah, I do it on a very limited basis, and I would echo those points. I try to use it to tell a transitional story to something that is beyond just the personal piece, and I'll just leave it there. I don't know if you have another question. There's one in the Q&A that I think is really relevant with like the 1 minute we might have left. Mark, somebody asked in the Q&A whether, and I'll let you answer, whether you think pro memberships are worthwhile.
Oh boy, it's a really good question right now. The professional membership, the subscription memberships are valuable if you're going to do a lot of research or you are a pretty big researcher on LinkedIn. For my 13 years as a LinkedIn coach, I have only been a subscriber twice, and that was when I was doing really large projects for my clients. I have always managed a different way to do it. This is my way of saying you don't need to pay for it. Now, let me just tell you, as of Monday, this past Monday, everybody who has a standard non-subscription membership is limited to only 10 invitations to connect to you per month. And that is changing my thought process about whether I want to get a subscription, because I ask a lot more than 10 people a month to join me on LinkedIn. So I'm going to sit back a little bit and let's see what's happened before I make a knee-jerk reaction. But nonetheless, It's all up to, it depends on what you're doing. If you're in the recruiter world, you definitely need a recruiting subject, if you product. If you are a salesperson and sales is your primary function, the sales navigator is essential for you. But if you are doing something on the periphery of all that, and it's probably a viable business, and you've gotten along this long without it, without really feeling hogtied, except for what I just told you, you're okay. But I think it's shifting a little bit.
Yeah, I've never, I had it once for a month or two and dropped it. I've never found it to be necessary for what I did.
And word to the wise folks, do not join it for the annual membership, because if your function changes and you suddenly don't need it anymore, there are no refunds, and you've just laid down about $1,000 that you don't get back. I don't work for LinkedIn. I say whatever I want, as you can tell. But nonetheless, I think that I'm going to probably end up being a subscriber.
Well, thank you both for all of your answers, and thank you to all of our participants for your questions. I'm now going to hand things back over to Marina to wrap things up today.
Yeah, thanks, Nina, and thank you, Mark. Thanks, Andy. That was a very exciting presentation. Definitely interesting information, and lots that people can take out and use in their own efforts at growing their brand. The next thing I want to make sure y'all know about is one of our newest benefits for Justia Connect Pro members. So this webinar today is not available for CLE credit. This was just a webinar to help you learn some more professional growth opportunities that you can use in your practice and in your branding efforts and your practice growth efforts. However, many of our presentations are accredited for CLE. And so if you are a lawyer looking for that CLE credit, then you can upgrade to that pro membership for $19.99 a month, or the annual membership, which gets you essentially 2 months free. And you can take advantage of those CLE programs when we offer them. But the other benefit, and the even newer part of this, is our on-demand CLE offerings. And so you can watch our previous CLE courses for credit. If you have colleagues that you would like to refer our courses to, or that they're coming up on a deadline for CLE, then they can, of course, also get that pro membership and watch those courses for credit as well. So browse our webinar center, check out the upcoming live programs, the CLE programs, the regular webinars that we have out there for professional development. Look at those and see if they're a good fit for you. If they are, then that is that Justia Connect Pro benefit, and we would highly encourage you to check it out, as well as the other benefits that are available to those of you who choose to get a Justia Connect Pro membership. And I hope all of you have a great rest of your day and a fantastic weekend. We hope to see you in just a few days on Wednesday.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next video.